What is the youngest and oldest age you would date? Is there a range you are most comfortable with? I am 23 years old and would not date anyone younger than 18 or 19, and no older than 28. What do you think? For context, the legal age of consent where I live is 16. The age of consent is raised to 18 if I am in a position of trust or authority over the other person. Story 1. I dream of finding a woman who financially supports me, the kind of lady who drives a Rolls-Royce to get a stamp to mail a letter. Story 2. You do you, but I think some age gaps indicate other issues. I tried dating some younger women, 8 to 10 years younger, and I never felt older than those dates. It wasn't for me. Story 3. Honestly, it depends on each case. If it is an 18-year-old and a 60-year-old, I am sorry, but I am going to judge. However, if it is like a 30-year-old with a 60-year-old, it is different. Story 4. If everyone is legal and no one is in a position of authority over that person, such as a teacher or boss, then have all the fun you want. Honestly, I think only Reddit cares about this, and you will hear Reddit care about this. Story 5. I say 25. But the last 3 girls I dated were 21 to 22. I did not meet them at a bar. I try not to have a big age gap because it causes too many experience issues, and you end up reliving a lot of the same things. Story 6. Why would you date a young woman barely out of high school? She is not very mature and may still be upset that she was not selected as a varsity cheerleader. Story 7. If she has the word teen in her age, she is automatically disqualified. I tend to think it is not appropriate to date someone with a child the same age as people I know. Also, no. As I am 38, I am not dating anyone in their 20s because 1, all they want to do is party. I have already been through my addictions and have no desire to step into that world anymore. So I focus on people 5 years older and 5 years younger than me. I have accepted that I am getting older, so I do not need someone half my age because I am not going through a midlife crisis. Story 8. For me, it would not be more than a couple of years. It is because of the life I have been blessed with. I became a Marine at 20. By 22, I had spent a year in Japan and had traveled around the Far East, the big islands of Japan, Korea, the Philippines, Thailand, Singapore, then down to Australia. Closer to home, I went to South America, Central America, and Canada. I served 6 years and left at 26. How would I relate to an 18-year-old who still lived at home with mom and dad? I was 28 when I graduated from Arizona State University. How would I relate to someone who just graduated from high school? After university, I went on the job with the fire department. With the things I saw, how would I relate to a sophomore in university? A girl who works part-time at McDonald's and lives at home? As I said, that is just me. Story 9. A lot of people here are saying, if you are both consenting adults, but power dynamics are a real thing. I am a little over 50, but most people think I am in my 40s. My significant other is 41 this year. We have an age difference of about 12 years, but we are fairly close in life experiences. We have also known each other most of our lives, and a few years ago we converged. Best relationship of my life. When I was younger, things were complicated. At 17, I started hanging out with a woman who was 24. A few weeks after I turned 18, we were hooking up. She basically used me as a fulcrum to end another relationship, and once that was done, she dropped me like a bad habit. I had just graduated high school, and she had already graduated college and was considering a master's program. When I was 22 or 23, I dated a woman who was 32. That was also difficult, as there was another married woman in our friend group who let me know she was attracted to me, then worked in the background to get me hooked up with the 32-year-old. The life experience difference was significant. She was divorced and had a 12-year-old child. I had moved into my second apartment on my own. Was I a consenting adult in both of these relationships? I sure thought I was. Was the power dynamic equal? Not even a little bit. Did it have lasting effects on my dating life? Absolutely. If you are 17 and get into a sexual relationship with a peer in the same life stage, you are both fumbling around figuring out what works and what is not. If you are 17 and someone 7 to 10 years older than you starts a sexual relationship with you, do you not think the more experienced person would take the lead? There was much less fumbling around and much less discovery on my part. For years, I was always seeking a power imbalance. The only women I would date had to be very aggressive. Otherwise, I could not figure out what I was doing. My mind had already decided that all I had to do was sit back and let it happen, but that is not how it works in near-peer circumstances. Consent is a much misunderstood term. Story 10. If I were to become single, I would prefer the younger partner to be at least 10 years younger than my oldest child. The older partner's age will be decided as time goes on. My oldest child will be 28 this year. Story 11. In my opinion, it has more to do with life milestones than actual age. 18 and 25 seem kind of odd. 25 and 32 do not seem nearly as strange. 32 and 39 seem perfectly normal. They are all 7 years apart, but they do not seem equal in terms of reasonableness. To be honest, as long as they are consenting adults, it is not really my business. Story 12. Once a person is over 25, date whoever. Under 25, you are almost always better off dating within a few years of your own age. No 18-year-old should be dating someone in their 30s. Story 13. I feel uncomfortable when someone is more than 5 or 6 years younger than me. I don't have a specific reason. That's just how I react when I see or hear their age, or when they look visibly young. Story 14. My range changes with my age. When I was 25, I had no issue dating a 19-year-old. Now that I am 30, the minimum age is 25 because I am not looking for girls anymore, but for women. Of course, there can be exceptions. However, to me, anyone 5 years younger than myself is just too young. Story 15. There is nothing specifically wrong with them, and I have seen successful age gap couples. However, the most troubling situations always seem to involve large age gaps. Story 16. Between the ages of 20 and 60, any gap is basically fine, though I have very little in common at this stage of my life, mid-30s, with anyone under 25. If it is expected to be long-term, as in a forever thing, I would proceed with caution. A 10-year or more age gap really widens in the senior years. The difference between a 75-year-old and an 85-year-old can be stark. The difference between 85 and 65 is the difference between traveling and enjoying retirement versus potentially full-time care. Story 17. Anything more than 5 years is difficult to understand. Approaching 10 years is baffling. What do you really have in common? Story 18. I am in my mid-40s. The majority of the women I go out with are between their mid-20s and early to mid-30s. I am not opposed to dating women my age, but their goals tend to be different from mine. In recent years, I have dated women who were in their early 20s, but their immaturity made dating them more work than it was worth. Story 19. I am a 50-year-old female in a great relationship, so this is purely academic. I also have a 24-year-old son. I could not see myself entertaining anyone under the age of 40, and even that is a stretch. Hopefully, it is also moot, since I am very happy with my boyfriend, and I have no intention of marrying. Story 20. As long as they are legally an adult, it is not my responsibility. However, I will silently judge you if you are over the age of 25 and date someone who is younger than 21. Story 21. I'm truly baffled by the half your age plus 7 responses. I'm 41, so that would mean my low end would be around 26. There is no way I would be interested in a 26-year-old. I think my range is 36 to 46, but it really depends on the individual. Story 22. Personally, as someone who just turned 24, I only go for ages 19 and up because that's the age I started to see myself as a young adult. I don't really have an age preference as long as they are attractive, fun, and know how to communicate. Story 23. I'm surrounded by wealthy clients, many of whom are sugar daddies, so seeing men aged 45 to 65 with 18-year-old women is somewhat normalized. I'm 45 and married, but if I weren't having interacted with these women, I would be hard-pressed to even consider someone under 30 and would likely be more attracted personality-wise to someone around 35. I have met women in their late 20s who are interesting, but the thought of them being my age when I start to deteriorate seems like a disaster. I only think about this because most men around me are my age or older, divorced, and dating much younger women. I'm happily married to a woman 3 years my senior. Story 24. I have been with a woman 20 years my senior for nearly 7 years now. I love her deeply. We have a lot in common and had strikingly similar upbringings, both growing up in rural settings. Her children were teenagers or in their 20s when we got together, so I did not need to do much parenting, and they were not expecting me to. We all get along well and have become quite a family. I may not be a full father figure, but they seem to respect me greatly, certainly more than their father. It helps that she is very attractive and a former beauty queen, albeit from her small hometown. She will be beautiful for the rest of her life, wrinkles or not. Her active lifestyle keeps her spry, and she has more energy than I do. Although I do not mean to sound shallow, I loved her just as much through her cancer, including the steroid-induced weight gain and chemotherapy-induced hair loss, as I love her now. That said, I still cringe at most age gap relationships. Many examples show problematic age gaps, often involving women in their 20s or younger with men in their 50s or older. Story 25. I think as long as they are legal, then it is none of my business. I am a woman, by the way. Sometimes I forget it is the Ask Men subreddit. Story 26. The age gap obsession of the last year comes from women in their 30s who are upset that men in their 30s do not want them now that they are ready to settle down. As long as everyone is an adult, it does not matter. Story 27. I'm 3 years older than my wife, almost exactly. When we started dating, it sounded strange. We had known each other for 2 years at that point, 19 and 16. Now we're 34 and 31, and that sounds normal. I think some age gaps are inappropriate, like 50 plus with a 20-year-old. No thanks. That being said, if no grooming was involved and both parties consent, then I don't really care. Story 28. I do not really buy into the whole, if both people are consenting adults then it is fine argument. I think people are not sufficiently developed and life experienced until their late 20s. Therefore, any significant age gaps until one party is about 30 are worth really scrutinizing because there are definite power dynamics at play. Story 29. Think whatever you will about age gaps between consenting adults. But the half-age plus 7 rule was not folk wisdom. It was a sexist rule to suggest men should marry younger women. It is not based on any science and has no empirical evidence showing it results in greater happiness or anything else. It might be good at maximizing population growth and making a more likely subordinate wife, but that is about it. It did not apply in the other direction. If you and your partners are compatible, not coercive and legal, then go for it. Plenty of people the same age mess up their relationships too. Many have had experiences where certain age differences, younger or older, did not work out, and they let that guide their other relationships. When people are especially young, it can be beneficial to have a partner who is at least a few years older to help them get their life going, again if the dynamic is not coercive. Two young people can create some unwise dynamics together and mess things up for each other. Two older people can easily experience a life stage mismatch even if their ages are close together. It is frequently the case that people who are not in compatible life stages make for a poor relationship. So being closer in age can be a good thing, as can having an age gap. It is also common for people to not be in the same or compatible life stages with potential dating partners of their own age. It is also common for people to be attracted mostly to those not their same age. Life stage and age are not the same thing. Selecting from a pool of interested people does not always overlap with those close to you in age. So be kind, be ethical, and do what you will. Story 30. Approximately 7 years. I feel that is a good range, but honestly, it does not matter if you have good chemistry, and obviously the age gap is not too suspicious. Story 31. I am 38 and married. If I were not, I would look for women over 28 and under 42. I might date someone as young as 24 if we really connected, but I would not actively seek someone that young. I would also date as old as 55 if we got along well. Story 32. It's your relationship, so enjoy it. As long as it is not illegal, we will not judge. Ultimately, the decision is yours, and it depends on where you are in your life. Some people may disagree with a 1-year age gap, but make this choice for yourself. Story 33. When I was 20, I dated women from 18 to 43. But realistically, I think 10 years apart would be best, as long as both are of legal age. Story 34. If everyone is a legal and consenting adult, then go ahead. Personally, I think too large a gap in age or experience could make a relationship frustrating, but I would not rule someone out just because of age, assuming they are 20 or older. Story 35. To answer the question in the topic, adults can date adults. Regarding the question, what is the youngest and oldest person you would date? The answer is from 21 to 1 year younger than my age. Story 36. I am in my mid-30s, and 24 to 25 is the lowest age I will consider. Anything lower, she will need to be a leader managing everything. Otherwise, I would feel like I am babysitting, and no one wants that. At around 24 or 25, life has likely challenged her a few times. How she handles those challenges will show if I want to be in a relationship with her. I will only date women a few years older. Again, she must be highly capable in life. Story 37. I have a bunch of random thoughts. People who have a problem with them are almost always just projecting some sort of insecurity onto them. Given two consenting adults, I could not care less about them. As long as society agrees that 18 is an adult, then that is old enough to make decisions for yourself, even if they end up being mistakes. I would date anywhere between 21 and 35. Story 38. My grandfather dated a woman 22 years younger than him. He was 97, and she was 75. They were quite happy together, and everyone at the nursing home said they were the cutest couple. Story 39. I used to care about age gaps until I met a girl 10 years older than me. She is awesome. I am glad we met. Now I look the other way regarding age gaps. My friends do not like my opinion on it, but none of them have experienced it. Story 40. I am 47 years old and recently started seeing a woman who is 30. She is unpredictable, spirited, and sometimes obnoxious. I know it will not work because she is too immature or inexperienced. A few years ago, I dated a woman who was 32 while I was 44. She was smarter than me in many ways, kind, funnier than most people, and a lovely person overall. Unfortunately, we had to part ways due to family obligations. At some point, age matters very little. Story 41. It varies based on maturity. I stayed within a couple of years of my age. I know someone who is nearly 30 but tells girls in their early 20s that he is their age, so they do not think he is a creeper. Story 42. Please provide me with all the beautiful, flexible mothers you can send. We can play bridge after she gathers herself from the bed. Story 43. The only time I think a gap is creepy is if the older person was an adult and knew the younger person before they were an adult. Story 44. I am 34 years old, and my preferred dating age range is between 25 and 36. Dating anyone younger or older than that feels a bit unusual for me. Story 45. I, as a 25-year-old, fell in love with a 46-year-old. We got married at 30 and 51. No regrets. We have built an amazing life together. Story 46. I think many young women lack good judgment. For their own protection, they need to be reminded to stay within the 2 times their age minus 7 rule. Story 47. I don't care about age. There are 45-year-olds who can't keep an apartment clean and 24-year-olds who are more responsible than most millennials or 30-year-olds who struggle with adulting. For me, anyone under the age of 24 is a functional child, has no idea how to behave in a relationship, and emotionally harms the people they date with their avoidant and anxious thoughts and behaviors. I am not exaggerating. Ask them if they have to do something to make their partner feel loved and how they make their partner feel loved. They genuinely think a relationship comes with no emotional responsibility toward the people they are with. They are just casual partners, with no intimacy or affection. Story 48. I'm in my late 20s, and my personal rule is if I can't buy you a drink in the United States, you're too young to date for me. As far as age gaps in general are concerned, once someone is in their 20s, I really just don't care. Story 49. I heard a long time ago that half your age plus 7 is a guideline. There are certainly examples where that falls apart, but it has not steered me wrong in my anecdotal experiences. Story 50. The socially accepted formula is your age divided by 2 plus 7. For example, a 40-year-old could date a 27-year-old. Story 51. Morally, I don't see any issues with age gaps as long as both parties are consenting adults. My rule is half your age plus 8. That means 21-year-olds dating 18-and-a-half-year-olds. I do feel there have been many people questioning their age gaps recently on multiple online forums. The truth is that we all experience different phases of life at different times. Combine that with varied parenting styles, and you get unusual situations. For example, some 40-year-old men act like they are in their late 20s. Some 30-year-old single men are not dating at all. 19-year-old men date 36-year-old single mothers. 21-year-olds get vasectomies because they think their children will turn out like the bad fathers they had. It's possible younger people observe the older person's assets and feel at ease, knowing they do not have to stress. They can focus on school or pursuing passions. Maybe the older person has a house, a nice car, enough money, and a decent career. The sex is mostly great because the older person has learned some lessons. As a hypothesis of mine, styles rotate in and out of fashion usually every 15 to 20 years. Thinking in terms of older men with younger women, when he was in his 20s, he lacked confidence. He couldn't communicate well enough to attract someone his age. Now 20 years have passed and that style is back. He is 40 with a house, car, money, and career. Women half his age are also struggling with school, jobs, bills, parents, and immature men their age. They both frequent the same places. He is now confident, learned to groom himself, smells good, and knows things that may be interesting. My assumption is that this is how an older man ends up with a younger woman. Story 52. The rule has always been half your age plus 7. For you, that makes the range 18 to 32. I think your cutoff of 28 is a recognition that women peak at 29. Men, on the other hand, peak at 45, so maybe you should not be too quick to get into something. Story 53. A while ago, I read that someone halves their age and adds 7 to it, and that is the youngest age they prefer. For example, 24 divided by 2 equals 12. 12 plus 7 equals 19. I think this is somewhat correct because as you get older, the age gap widens. For instance, when someone is 40, by this example, they might prefer 27-year-olds. Story 54. At 18, you can share explicit content online for the entire world to see, including men 20 or more years older, and no one bats an eye. But if an 18-year-old wants to date a 30-year-old, the man is suddenly labeled as predatory and a criminal. Story 55. I think age matters less the older the younger partner is. As a kid, I found it strange that people dated outside their grade, but once you are firmly in adulthood, even large age gaps are only unusual, not alarming. It is also silly when people ask, what do a 40-year-old man and a 25-year-old woman have in common? They are in a relationship, not discussing how they felt during significant historical events. That is probably all that is happening in an age-appropriate relationship too. On the other hand, people who say, well, it is legal so it is not creepy or predatory, are not convincing anyone. Let's be honest, in what other situation do people give full respect to someone barely following the rules? It is common to see legal actions that still feel immoral or violate the spirit of the law, just as there are illegal things that do not feel wrong. You can carry a rifle on your back, walk across the street from a school taking pictures of children, and if anyone confronts you, you can respond with offensive language. That is all legal, but most people will judge you. They will think, that person is acting strangely, and this feels like a bad faith exploitation of the rules. This is something to consider if you are in your 30s and your date night is canceled because your partner is doing standardized test preparation. It is one thing if your genuine opinion is that something is not wrong, but if your main justification is, well, it is legal, that is problematic. Story 56. I think there is something to men and women being 18 to early 20s dating older because they are technically adults but lack life experience. Once someone is in their mid-20s, on average, everyone is different. Most people seem to be closer to the same page regardless of age. This is a hard generalization and it is definitely case by case. I am in a 15-year age gap relationship right now, 28-year-old female, 43-year-old male. It is not ideal for me. My recent experiences lead me to think that the size and quality of the dating pool around my age is really hard to navigate. When I date my age, they are some type of extreme neurotic, narcissistic, sociopathic, or some combination. I am not saying all, but a good portion. Story 57. My thoughts on age gaps are simple. When you die, you will be lucky to have experienced happiness and joy more than sorrow and sadness with the time you had in life. If two people love each other and make one another happy, and no laws are being broken, then that is all that matters. Anyone who has a problem with this would not lift a finger to make you happy, so their issues should not matter to you. I came up with this idea when almost every friend I had growing up died before they turned 50. Story 58. Love has no age limit. I have seen a more than 20-year age gap with one of my patients. I honestly thought she was his daughter, but no, they were truly in love with each other. Story 59. As long as it is legal, I would say go for it, but be aware that you may have issues in the future due to different values and different stages in life. My ex was 9 years younger than me, where she valued her online friendships a lot. I valued alone time with her more. We had different ideas of what a healthy relationship was and what was healthy in a relationship. She thought my boundaries for not texting her online male friend every day for hours on end and her ex were unhealthy. I thought exactly the opposite. Texting her online male friend more than me and her ex was unhealthy. Story 60. First of all, congratulations on not wanting to date someone under the age of 18, considering that would probably be illegal because they are a minor. As a 47-year-old, if I were single, which I am not, I would not date anyone in their 30s or anyone in their 60s. But the age range in between would be my ideal choice. Story 61. I had a personal rule when I was in my late teens and early 20s. Any age gap could be acceptable as long as the older person was not known for exclusively pursuing people my age. Your mileage may vary, but this rule served me well. It helped to filter out most of the people who thought they could take advantage of my perceived vulnerabilities such as youth, being transgender, and obvious autism. Story 62. I think as the ages increase, what I consider acceptable does too. A person in their 30s pursuing a teenager is a no-go for me. I had a girl who was 19 break up with her girlfriend who wanted to have sex. I was 33 and I couldn't, it just felt wrong. I consider 20 years the maximum age difference, like a 35-year-old dating a 55-year-old. It is a proven fact that people's brains are still developing in their 20s. That's probably why they act immature in college. A 50-year-old pursuing a 20-year-old is just sick and perverted. Story 63. The youngest I am willing to go is 18. The oldest I am willing to go is 25. Any younger and it is super weird even though it is legal. Any older and I will not be nearly as mature as them. I do not think I am nearly as mature as most 23-year-olds I know. Story 64. It is hard to genuinely say that no person over 25 should ever be with an 18-year-old because those are two extremely different stages of life. However, for ages between 18 and 22, it highly depends on emotional intelligence, maturity, and the future outlook for both individuals. The only age gap I cannot support is when it is 10 or more years. That is where it feels uncomfortable to me, although if both are over 40, it is not as concerning. Age gaps below the age of 18 are complicated because it heavily depends on the birth dates of both individuals, how long they have known each other, when they started dating, and their ages at that time. For example, 13 and 17 are not appropriate for obvious reasons. Story 65. As long as it is legal, it is acceptable. It is no one's business what consenting adults do with each other. The moral outrage about this topic is hypocritical and illogical. Story 66. This topic comes up frequently, and the reality is this. Some people will judge you, others will not care. If both parties are adults, likely the law will not intervene, so it is up to everyone involved to ensure that nothing strange or abusive is happening, and that is all. Story 67. I should mention that the modern concern over age gaps is so deep-seated and emotionally charged that it has manifested in beliefs resembling secular versions of superstitious religious beliefs. It is very difficult, if not impossible, to get people to give it up at this point, as most have been inculcated and inundated with these beliefs their entire lives. What attests to this is that despite not being nearly as religious as the United States of America, European nations like the United Kingdom and other Western nations like Australia share the paranoid and revulsive attitudes surrounding the idea of age gaps, and thus the concept of civil rights in general. People seek to strip away the agency of those they want to force into a representative state of asexuality. This is projected into hatred and willful misunderstanding of the older people in these relationships, along with total dismissal of younger people who want to be in them. The narrative remains that people under a certain age do not want age gap relationships with older people and are happily without this component in their lives despite ample evidence to the contrary. That is why so many in the public sphere are eager to sweep visible instances under the rug and harshly chastise anyone who acknowledges them. Since Western nations, particularly the United States of America and the United Kingdom, are so powerful economically, they have spread this hatred and paranoia globally, including throughout the East and South America, which used to be more tolerant of this, as well as nullifying the policies of some Scandinavian nations like the Netherlands that were far more reasonable than the absolutist age of consent laws in the United States of America and the United Kingdom. It has gotten to the point that most people cannot think clearly or rationally about this topic and respond in knee-jerk fashion. It has become almost obligatory for even some of the best critical thinkers to join in performative outrage to avoid being labeled negatively. They also enjoy using this as a weapon against their opponents, even as their opponents do the same to them. This creates a terrifying and oppressive situation for people in these types of relationships, most of whom are decent individuals struggling to make a living in a world that rejects them. They suffer damage to their reputation if they or anyone speaks up on their behalf. This creates the illusion that the consensus opinion is backed by research, while the body of research contradicting it is willfully ignored and often censored. Story 68. I used to have opinions on many of these topics, but as I have aged, I see things differently. It is the young women pushing for age gap relationships, and older women blame men for it, for reasons unknown. However, it is young women advocating for these things. Story 69. I couldn't care less. I am 38. If you have your life together and we complement each other's lives in the ways we are seeking, I am fine with it. I prefer women younger than me for reasons that may upset some people. But that is the joy of being a free-thinking individual capable of entering into a relationship with anyone who is of legal age. I am not taking on someone else's children. I am not dealing with past boyfriend or ex-husband drama or emotional damage that I didn't cause. And I am not cleaning up messes. I didn't work hard to build the life I have to settle for someone else's leftovers. Story 70. I think less about the age gap and more about the life stage. After I turned 21, I would only date women over 21. When I was in my 30s, it was a 5-year age gap plus or minus. Now in my 50s, I might consider up to 10 years difference, but likely still a 5-year difference. Story 71. If both individuals are over 30 years old, then age differences are irrelevant, as they should be mature enough to understand what they are getting themselves into. Ages 25 to 29 is pushing it, but not too bad. Below that, you should follow the half plus 7 rule. I am 34 years old, and anyone below 25 just feels inappropriate. I cannot see how there would not be power dynamic imbalances. Even 25 feels like pushing it. I would gravitate more towards 28 and older. Story 72. I'm 40 now, and I feel like anyone under around 24 or 25 is way too young. Anything more than 10 years difference is a bit much for me. So 30 or older for an old guy like me. Story 73. I think people should be in the same basic phase of life. Otherwise, you end up with a very unbalanced power dynamic, even if one partner does not have an official position of power over the other. I am currently 51 years old. I would be willing to date anyone in their 30s or older. Story 74. I'm fine with it for others, but I can't see dating someone who is likely going to die sooner than me. Perhaps I'm thinking too long-term, but that sounds silly. Story 75. When I hear about people in their late 30s or older dating people in their late teens or early 20s, I assume they are one part predator and one part loser who knows people closer to their own age will not believe their lies or put up with their nonsense. I am occasionally wrong, but suspect that most of the time I am right. Story 76. Depends on your tolerance and the law. Personally, I never dated anyone more than 5 years younger than me. Story 77. I briefly dated a 20-year-old when I was 32 but ended it because it was incredibly boring and we had very little in common. I brought her to a New Year's Eve party at my friend's house, and after that, all those friends stopped talking to me. Looking back, I can understand why. Story 78. You are allowed to do it if everyone is at the age of consent. Sometimes it works out and sometimes it does not. My friend once gave me the calculation. Half your age plus 7 and you are good. I experienced it once in my life. I was 19 and she was 28. It started off amazing, and our maturity levels were actually pretty close. But it fell apart because her goals eventually did not align with mine. We were obviously at different stages in life, which is a big deal. I think most age gap relationships fall apart because of goal differences. Story 79. As others pointed out, if you are both legal and consenting, have at it. However, I think if the age gap is too wide, it might bring struggles, as people tend to have different priorities if they are too far apart age-wise. I think this is rather useful advice in general. People should not date anyone younger than their age divided by 2, rounded up, plus 7. So in your case, it would be 18 or older. For someone who is 30, it is 22 or older. Story 80. Personally, I wouldn't date anyone younger than 20 or older than 26. Before you turn 25, you should be within about 3 years of each other. Although 18 is legal, many 18 and 19-year-olds are still immature and easily influenced. Their mindset does not change overnight on their 18th birthday. After 25, you can date anyone. At that point, you should know what you want and what you don't. If you are being manipulated, it is not due to immaturity or age. It is your responsibility. Story 81. I don't really care more than I care about people of the same sex or different races. It's no big deal, whatever floats your boat. Personally, I have always dated around my age, but I dated a woman 15 years older than me, and my wife is 7 years younger than me. Those are the two most important and impactful relationships I have ever had. I will never date anyone under 21, more like 25 really. There are a lot of life stages that happen rapidly before 25 that I don't want to be a passenger in. I think the same is true of people after 40. You just have different priorities coming up. That does not mean the right person won't be the right fit, but it is just a lot more work. Story 82. I usually say plus or minus 4 years is a good rule. If you were in high school or college at some point concurrently, you will have common cultural references and likely be at similar places in life. Granted, everyone has different maturity levels. For what it is worth, my girlfriend is 33 and I am 30. We met 2 years ago. When I was dating around, I went down to 22, and the few girls in question were really immature. Up to 33 was about the limit of what I was comfortable with when first meeting someone, since I did not want to be pressured to rush into marriage and have children. 2 to 3 years of dating and then a year of engagement seems like the right timeline for me, and 33 or 34 is about where you will land for that if you want multiple children. Story 83. At 42, I would not date anyone older than 45 or younger than 30. I would still like to have children if I can meet the right woman. However, if I meet her and she is around my age, I can put that energy into my niece, nephews, or other community engagement. Story 84. People really need to evaluate what they consider a child and what they consider an adult. Are you infantilizing adults? Are we making children work, pay taxes, and participate in the military? Cannot be both. Is 18 a child or an adult? Pick one. A line has to be established somewhere. My view is that there is a difference in levels of involvement. If you are 38 and you hook up and have consensual, safe relations with an 18-year-old and then part ways, I see no issue. On the other hand, if you are 38 and actually dating an 18-year-old and having influence in their life, that is where it becomes problematic to me. Plenty of 19, 20, and 21-year-olds are undeniably attractive. I would have fun, but I certainly do not want them in my life otherwise, despite being adults. It is similar to how you know if some people are boyfriend material or not. If that 19-year-old is lean, fit, energetic, and passionate, then yes. But I do not want his life intersecting with mine in any way beyond that. I am sure they would feel the same. A mutually beneficial transactional arrangement. Or, as I said, let's talk about what defines an adult and how we should classify and treat these people. Story 85. I think depending on the people, the answer will vary. I am 20 years old in a relationship with a 29-year-old woman, and we are both incredibly happy where we are. No two people are the same, and no two relationships are the same, but if you find something that works for you and both parties are happy, then who cares? Story 86. I'm very interested in age gap relationships. I am recently 39 years old and would prefer someone at least 10 years younger. The reasoning is simple: to pursue and be with someone you desire above all others. Attraction should not be only superficial, but the superficial aspect helps a lot. Story 87. I originally preferred dating within plus or minus 10 years when I used dating applications, but anyone I dated near the 10-year difference was incompatible. Ethically, I do not know the answer, but practically around 5 years works for me. I am 40 years old but was 37 when I used the applications. Story 88. For me personally, I would not go for younger as it is not my preference currently. I always go for the same age or preferably older. As a 17-year-old soon to be 18, I draw the line at 24 to 25 to be honest in preference. However, if I were to go for younger, I would draw the line at 15 at least, given my current age. However, I am about to be hypocritical right now. From experience, even if you consent when you are 15, do not go for 21-year-olds. They often do not like you for who you are. They are trying to fill a void due to their insecurity and think you are easy and naive because at that age you are. In rare cases, they actually want you and not what you offer. Story 89. I am a 54-year-old male. My current partner is a 29-year-old female, and my previous partner of 6 years is a 32-year-old female. I never looked for an age gap relationship. I just met people I connected with. I have not had any issues from people we know, but we have received some looks from strangers. In both situations, she made the first move. Story 90. It depends on how picky you can be and the level of your libido. If you rate yourself as 9 or 10, you have many more choices. If you are less than that, you will have a harder time finding lovers who you are attracted to and who are attracted to you. I consider myself in the 7 to 8 range and I am high libido. If you have high libido, your life will be even more difficult because finding a lover who is also high libido or can handle the amount of sex you need is tough. I started being intimate when I was 19. By 20, I had lovers who were my age, 5 to 10 years older, and even one who was 15 years older. I found the older partners, at least 10 years older than me, were the most comfortable as lovers. They had experience, knew what they liked and wanted, and were the easiest to get along with. Age is just a number. What is most important is common interests. If you are involved in a hobby and the potential lovers you might encounter share that hobby or interest, you will find common ground beyond sex and can have a potential long-term relationship. Story 91. As you age, the influence of an age gap decreases. For example, an 18-year-old with a 28-year-old, but a 40-year-old with a 50-year-old. It is all relative. Story 92. I would not necessarily look at someone younger than me and be put off by their youth. I would not be swayed by it much, but rather be impressed if they acted mentally mature for their age. I also would not date anyone beyond 38, but I do recall going out with an older lady who was 39 while I was 28. Let's just say I am at the point in my life where having someone who can give me peace or not steal my peace is the biggest priority. Story 93. I largely do not care about what other people do, who they do it with, or how they do it. As long as everyone is a willing adult participant, I could not care less. Story 94. Depends on them. I am 42. My girlfriend is 30. We have been together for 5 years. It has been perfectly fine. When I was 23, I dated an 18-year-old. It was perfectly fine. Story 95. There is an empirical equation floating around that your limit should be your age divided by 2 plus 7. Personally, I wouldn't care except in really extreme scenarios like a 40-year-old with an 18-year-old or a 70-year-old man with a 30-something woman. If you meet a person and there is a real connection, then it should be no one's business. Now, if someone is consistently looking for younger partners, like Leonardo DiCaprio, for example, then I agree that it may display signs of problematic behavior. Story 96. In general, the half plus 7 rule is accurate for determining when an age gap starts to be significant. For example, if a person is 30, half of 30 is 15, plus 7 is 22. This means that the age difference becomes important when comparing a 30-year-old and a 22-year-old. Similarly, a 60-year-old and a 37-year-old, or a 25-year-old and a 19-year-old illustrate this concept. Story 97. Once you are an adult, generally considered to be 20 years and older, you are fully responsible for your actions in life. No one should treat you like a naive child who can be easily taken advantage of. If you are a 20-year-old person dating someone in their 80s or have children with them, that is your responsibility, and everyone else should mind their own business. Story 98. My mom is 18 years younger than my dad and 19 years younger than my stepdad. She was 23 when she got together with my dad. She has a type. She openly states she has a preference for much older men. While I never understood it, despite their problems, my mom and stepdad have been together for over 30 years. Frankly, I think people who find it strange that an older man is with a younger woman are taking away the woman's agency and immediately assuming she could only be interested in older men for reasons like money or manipulation. Once someone is over 18, they should do what they want. If there is anything problematic, age is not the reason. A wealthy 19-year-old with a poor 18-year-old faces just as many problems as if the 19-year-old were 90. Story 99. Age of the oldest divided by 2 plus 7 for the lower acceptable range. And honestly, once the younger party is past 30, judgment is very light. Story 100. The only men who care about an age gap care because they cannot get it. The only women who care about an age gap care because they are no longer the youthful beauty everyone wants. Everyone else could not care less. As long as it is legal, consensual, and you wash your hands after, it is all acceptable. Story 101. There is a formula for this. Age floor equals the age of the older person divided by 2 plus 7, where P is the age of the older person in question. Dating anyone younger than that number is considered suspicious. Story 102. If someone is deemed old enough to be sent to die in war, to vote, to decide to terminate a pregnancy, to have sex, to sell sex, to legally change their gender, to take out a loan over tens of thousands of dollars for education or a house, to vote, and so on, that means they are considered fully capable of knowing the consequences and risks of life. So personally, I would say, it is legal now to partner in any way as long as both parties are adults and consenting. If not, then be consistent when changing the rules. If 18 is not old enough to decide whether to be with a 50-year-old woman or man, then how is that person old enough to decide whether to vote for those 50, 60, or 70-year-olds in politics? How is that person old enough to decide whether to participate in war because of what older people write and tell them about the world? How are they old enough to decide whom to accept as clients during sex work? Just be consistent about it. Story 103. Honestly, I used to care about it. A man aged 44 at the time, had a girl hitting on me because she listened to a discussion I had with friends about kinks, and we were apparently compatible. She was really my type, but too young for my taste, 22 at the time, which was 1.5 years younger than my own daughter, and that rubbed me the wrong way. When my daughter came by, we went to the same bar again, where the girl in question worked as a server. My daughter noticed the attraction between me and the girl and asked me about it. We talk about almost everything, and I told her that she was right, but the girl was younger than her, and that it bothered me. She asked if I was stupid and gave an example with her mom. When her mom and I separated, her mom went with an older guy about the same age gap, 21 to 42, and pointed out that more than 20 years later, they are still together. Her point was more than valid. I will not disregard a potential relationship again because of an age gap, within reason and legality, that might be perceived as strange by some. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.